I mean, I feel like maybe the starting point is reincarnation. It's us as souls. And I know that past life regression was something that your dad did for you and that you started doing yourself soon after. So maybe with that, like explain reincarnation, explain how we come into this body in this point in time, in this family with all these things. Like, how does this whole process work from death to rebirth?
All right, we got 5 hours.
Yeah, I know.
I'll sum it up. So my kind of beginning consciously to get into all of this stuff was past life regression. And okay, so I'll bring it like super macro and then I'll bring it super micro. So at a macro level, like in the entire universe, you've got source frequency, source energy. Some people call it God. I just call it source. And source is unity. It's everything and nothing. It's light and dark. And source decided to split itself off many times over and incarnate into singular versions of itself. So if it's all the colors in the rainbow, it's like, I'm just going to be red for this lifetime. I'm just going to be yellow. And the reason why source decided to go back to the beginning, go back to the nothingness, is because it wanted to learn. It wanted to experience. It wanted to grow. And that's kind of where we come into play, and plants and animals and all of that have a piece of source, have that soul. We're all experiencing different lessons. So the whole point of life in general, getting away from all the conspiracies and the agendas, is really just to be here to learn, to experience, to grow, to get challenged, to move forward. There's a really pivotal conversation that I had with Source itself many years ago. And the question I asked is like, I get asked this question all the time. Why is there so much suffering? Like, why, if you're this almighty, all-knowing, all omnipresent thing, why would you allow that? And Source came back to me to say, okay, imagine you had access to everything in my 3D world, all material possessions, all friends, all great dynamics, all knowledge, all information, all anything you could ever possibly imagine. You had it all. And Source said, all right, Elizabeth, how long would it take for you to get bored? I'm like, oof, yeah, not long. If you have it all, where do you go from there? And so Source decided to kind of reverse itself and to split itself off. And so if you imagine, like, I believe there are 12 dimensions in this universe, and there, of course, there are many different universes. And every dimension has a certain vibrational frequency to it. The lower dimensions are further away from source, further away from infinity or unconditional love frequency. So they're more singular, they're more linear. And then the closer you are to source in the higher dimensions, the more a part of source you become in that way. And so if you could imagine, like, just in a very plain way, every dimension, there's 1,000 lessons that you have to learn in that said dimension. Mm-hmm. You incarnate 1,000 times, or sometimes it takes 10,000 incarnations to learn the 1,000
we know those people,
or what have you. You learn what you need to from that dimension and you move on to the next one. Now, I originally thought upon receiving that information, okay, dimension 1, dimension 2, dimension 3, dimension 4, my linear mind perceived it as that. Then I started doing past life regression for people, and I'm like, you were an 11th dimensional angel in your past life, like in your very last lifetime. Like, what are you doing as a 3rd dimensional human? And I started to realize that it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You go wherever you are needed to experience that lesson. Yeah, so there is a difference in souls on this planet at this time, which is super unprecedented and very, very, very unlike any other 3rd dimensional terrestrial planet out there. Typically, 3rd dimensional planets have 3rd dimensional souls, period. Like, that's, even though it doesn't have to be that way, that's typically the way. If you're presented in a reality that contains this much or a certain amount of energy, your soul is going to match that much energy. It's like fitting a round peg into a round hole. That's essentially what it is. This planet is obviously different. There's a huge shift that's taking place. We're this massive peace treaty. So we have bad influences. We've got these shapeshifters. We've got these dark entities. And however, we also have all of these other beings who are choosing to be here at this time. So the Galactic Federation said, all right, we kind of messed up. The reptilian beings are on planet Earth. They're manipulating human beings. What can we do to help? And they went through a lot of different things to try and help humans. I'll name 2 of their attempts, and then I'll name the third one, which is actually what the success was. The first thing that they really tried was, let's just go greet the humans in our true form and tell them that there's so much more than this and that they're so powerful and that they can do it, And all of a sudden they're like, an angel from the sky came to greet me. Let's write a Bible about it. And let's indoctrinate more people, into this limited frame of belief. Or they were deemed crazy and unfortunately they got persecuted for having these experiences, or they became some sort of religious leader and totally took it out of context. So that strategy did not work. The second strategy that they tried, and they've tried many, these are just a couple, is they're like, let's go ahead and manufacture a vibrational grid around the planet that every human being is connected to. So it's kind of like it's almost like we have our mini sun or a mini source, but it's kind of like a grid all around planet Earth. And that helps me connect to you even without words, all across the planet. And there's actually been a couple of different really cool studies that show that we are connected in an unspoken way. So they manufactured that, and that helped to a certain extent. And we still have this consciousness grid around planet Earth today, which is getting more and more activated, which is really cool. The other thing that they tried that really started to work is they're like, okay, if the humans won't listen to us, or they do listen to us and they misinterpret us because we're so different, because we can fly and float and we come down in ships or we look different or what have you, let's just go ahead and be the human. Maybe they'll listen to their own kind. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, that didn't go over so well. So that's when the Galactic Federation started to look for volunteers. Hey, beautiful beings of higher frequencies. Do you want to go on an adventure of a lifetime? Come on down to planet Earth. It's going to be really fun, And so
like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
The ups and the downs. Yay.
Like just imagine jail, There you go. But that's, and it was really tough to find volunteers from the Galactic Federation, as you could imagine. Like, why would we leave all of this and go down there? But that's what they needed. They needed individuals who had a higher natural vibration to come to planet Earth to teach the humans while being a human. And this started to work. Like this technique was the first one to really make a huge impact. And that's kind of how, star seeds got born. And so I always say star seeds. And when I reference star seeds, it means that your soul is not originally from the lower dimensions. It's not originally from planet Earth. It's actually from much higher dimensions. And you came to incarnate and volunteer to be here as a human. The problem that happened.
What percentage of people are volunteers then?
It's been increasing. It's been increasing. I would say at this point in time, around, I don't know, it's hard to say. I would say between 10 to 20%.
Got it. Okay.
Which is actually a huge number of people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I think the numbers are increasing and more starseeds are incarnating here.
So this is what maybe Dolores Cannon was speaking about the 3 waves of volunteers, right? And they kind of have their own sort of characteristics, but there's been 3 waves of volunteers, and the most recent are really the crystal children that already have the upgraded DNA that, are growing up right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
And it's so fascinating to meet a being who's never been to this planet before. And they're just so bewildered and excited and sometimes super apathetic. And they're so overstimulated. They're so overwhelmed with everything that's taking place that they don't know, they don't know where to go. Right. And so I call it a starseed syndrome. Starseed syndrome is basically where they're just floating along life. They don't really have any passions because it's just too overwhelming for them to be here. And this is where we get into imprinted lifetimes, which I believe is the new 5D version of volunteers coming to planet Earth. Is why would you want to live out all of these dense human lifetimes of suffering and challenge and the Middle Ages, which were awful, when you could just download all of those lifetimes? It's kind of like reading a book and saying, all right, I've read the how-to human guide for planet Earth because I've downloaded and imprinted all of these past lives. And now I've got enough skills to come to planet Earth with. And me as a past life regressionist, especially at the beginning of my career, it was very difficult to tell the difference between what lifetimes are imprinted and what lifetimes are real. And there's a whole flurry of issues when we're getting into that, because if you get a random flashback of a past life of you getting persecuted and you believe that you really lived in that lifetime, then just by believing that was truly you, you could create karma around that. The whole point of past life imprinting is, of course, you get to hop over the space and the time of actually living through the lifetime, but you also come to the planet with zero karma. Because you took zero of that action in those lifetimes that you're imprinting, you come with a very clean energy center, which is incredible.
What would you tell people if they were going to, let's say someone was about to lose someone? What does that look like?
Lose someone like they're crossing over.
You die. Like, what happens then? Do you always come back as a human, or you don't always, right? You go other places, but you don't die, essentially? Your energy doesn't die?
Yeah, no, definitely not. So I do, like I used to do with clients, a lot of one-on-one work and a lot of mediumship. And so I would actually follow the soul through the white light tunnel. So that's all a thing. Like you hear a lot about like near-death experiences, and it's all very similar to that. When you pass away, you have a choice to make. Do I have unfinished business and do I stick around, or do I move on? And when a soul decides to stick around, but their body ends up passing away, then they're kind of in this weird liminal realm. So the way that I see it, because I kind of go to them, is it's kind of like they're just in a dark room and they're full of emotions and they're full of fears and they're full of attachments and what happened and what if and I should have and why not and all of these regrets. And because of that emotion that's unresolved or the attachment that's unresolved, they end up getting stuck there. And we can interpret or see them as like a ghost, like they're a spirit. And the dark room that they're in could be the house that they passed away in. And then they're attached to that house and they don't really know that they're attached and they don't know that there's another way. So that's when I can come in and say, hey, let me hear your story. What information do you need to get out in order to feel like your soul is relieved enough to cross over? Then I'll go ahead and cross them over. Some individuals have such a lighthearted energy. They're like, I know that I've been, slowly decaying for a while and I'm prepared for death. And when their body passes away, their soul goes right into the light and they end up crossing over. And that's why their friends and family members and spirit guides and everyone is there to greet them. And it's this huge celebration, and all of their heaviness and fears and regret from the past in this lifetime go away instantly. And then there's a period in time, some souls take longer than others, where they have to review their lifetime. It's like the lifetime review. It's like, these are the decisions that you made, and these are the people that you impacted. And so I don't believe that there's a heaven and a hell, like in a religious sense, but I do believe that there's higher and lower vibrations that you can experience afterwards. Eventually, a soul will choose to cross over. They're not stuck there indefinitely. They will, when they're ready, they will cross over to the light. And then in that place, after you've reviewed your lifetime and you figured out, what body do I want to be in next? What incarnation do I want to experience? What challenges have I yet to experience? And then you get put into the incarnation that best serves your highest vibrational good. Sometimes you're a tree. Like, people don't realize that we can be a tree. We can be an ant. We can be a bird, in the sky. And so